Bruce Richardson shouldn't be alive. He had a 100% blockage in an artery. And minutes after he collapsed onto the floor, doctors were ready to call the time of death. Well, here's what saved his life.
July 16, 2016 was like most Saturdays for Bruce Richardson. He was at a men's prayer breakfast at church and had just taken his seat.
I'm sitting directly across from Bruce. I looked over and I see Bruce, and he just rolled back, and his eyes roll back in his head, and his left arm goes over that chair, and he hits the floor.
The men started CPR and called 911. EMTs arrived within minutes and confirmed Bruce was having a massive heart attack.
Started giving the proper medications that we needed to give. We defibrillated several times throughout the run, and nothing just seemed to be working.
After 20 minutes, when he was still in VFib, it was time to make some other decisions.
As Bruce was being rushed to the ER, his wife Dee had been contacted and was on her way to the hospital with a friend from church. The only thing they told her was that Bruce had passed out.
I had a fear of the unknown. I didn't know what the pass out meant. Your mind can go in many different directions. I just wanted to get to the hospital.
Meanwhile, the ambulance had gotten Bruce to the hospital, but his heart had stopped again.
When they arrived, they were actively doing CPR. The patient was blue as the color of my scrubs. That certainly was a poor prognosis.
Even if Bruce did survive, he could have severe brain damage. But that didn't stop Dr. Bentz and his team to make every effort to save his life.
6-7 minutes without oxygen to the brain, and you begin to exhibit some neurologic injury to the brain. And he had, we think, well over 47 minutes. We typically have about a 0.8 chance of even getting a pulse back after 30 minutes. Still just an incredibly poor prognosis.
When Dee arrived, she was escorted to the room where the medical team was working to save her husband.
That was hard. It was hard because he's got apparatuses in his mouth and he's obviously not the right color. You know, it was hard.
Then finally, doctors got a steady pulse.
His color pinked up and started kind of making some purposeful movements, which still I can't fully explain how that recovery occurred so rapidly, but it was quite impressive to see.
Dr. Bentz said to me, he said, "I think we've seen a miracle here today."
Doctors found that the circumflex artery was 100% blocked. They inserted a stent to restore blood flow, but they still had concerns.
He was considered clinically dead. Total 1 hour and 7 minutes with no pulse. Because Bruce had been without oxygen for that length of time, it could have been total brain damage. And so there was still a fear, but I had a peace that I can't explain. And I look back at it now and I think it's only because of prayer.
Bruce improved dramatically over the next few days.
The doctors were astounded because he had started to breathe on his own. And when the respiratory therapist took the vent tube out, he said, "Hello." And, you know, we all just looked at each other and he just looked at us. Bruce just stared at us. And I truly believe God was saying to us through Bruce, "I'm here. I am working in this situation." And it gave us that peace.
In less than a week, Bruce was cleared to go home.
It is just an absolute miracle that I was able to walk out of that hospital 6 days later. I'm only here because of prayer.
Today, Bruce is healthy and shows no sign of brain damage. He loves spending time with his family and sharing his miracle with others.
I believe I'm here to share the story of hope and encouragement to those who don't have some hope and encouragement, and to believe in prayer, the power of prayer.
I know that God was a miracle-working God because that's his promise, that I will never leave you or I will never forsake you. And I thank God that day that he didn't. So I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and I know God has done this to give other people hope, and I hope it does.